So for all those joining us live today, and for all those who get a chance to view this later on our YouTube archive, I want to welcome you. My name is Bryce Lankard. I'm the director of the Click Photography Festival. I always like to start off by thanking various sponsors and partners. And in this case, I got to thank Dave Wofford over at Horse and Buggy Press and Friends, and also he has PS 118, where this wonderful exhibition is being held. We've already been privileged to hear a great talk by Norghazi, and then John Bechtold spoke this week, live and in person. That was wonderful. We look forward to this talk. I also need to make a couple of announcements. We're winding down the Click Photo Festival. After today, we only have 2 official events. Exhibitions remain open for the rest of the month, but we have 2 events remaining. I'm going to put those in the chat. And those are, this week, we have a live and in-person talk by Margaret Starter at the 21C Museum Hotel. We do ask you to register via Eventbrite. I'm going to put the registration on the screen. Margaret Starter has been a long time artist and educator here in the Triangle, and she's talking on October 27th in the evening. And then the final main event that we're doing is at the Nasher Museum. That is Thursday, October 28th. It is our last keynote talk. It is by New York-based photographer Renee Cox. It is their annual Rothschild lecture, and that will be a Zoom event. So in the chat there is the link to register for that event. I will say, just as we get started here, if you have questions throughout this, post it in the chat, and once we're wrapping up, I'll ask some questions of my own and any questions that come in through the chat. One of the things we've been really thrilled about, just the concept of this program that John and Nora's put together, is this idea of a sense of place. It's called From Fallujah, which in many ways has just become this sort of symbol of a war-torn city that's in the public consciousness, and yet it is a city full of life. It is a city that means many things beyond that. And I'll stop there because that is a concept that's really intrigued us, and recruiting these young photographers from Afghanistan to contribute these images is what has made this really fascinating for us to be a part of. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Bechtold and Norghazi, and hope you guys will introduce our photographers and talk about the project. And I say, let's get going. So John, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Bryce. Yeah, and it's Iraq, not Afghanistan.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad.
No, it's okay. Yeah, and so, hey, I'm John, and I curated this project along with project consultant Norghazi. And the project is From Fallujah. It's the work of 4 Iraqi photographers from Fallujah. And what I thought I would do is just read a bit from our project statement and show some images for those of you who have not had a chance to see them on view at PS 118. And then I will ask Noor to lend her voice and her perspective as well. And we are joined here with Noor and 4 photographers, Harith, Mohamed Jamal, Mohamed Alani, and Sura. So look forward to whatever questions you may have. And so I'm just going to read to you from our project statement. So the purpose of this exhibit is to literally install an Iraqi perspective in an American space, which challenges the militarized meaning of Fallujah, Iraq in public memory. Iraq is not a battlefield, neither is Fallujah. It is a place where people work, attend school, and frequent public spaces, wanting what we all want, a chance to peaceably choose our lives. This exhibit features 4 photographers from Iraq who take us through Fallujah at dawn, dusk, and during the early morning hours when doors open and this city, like most cities in the world, begins to stir in ways that speak to the simplicity of life. They take us to the Euphrates River as two hopeful men pull a fishing net from the water. They take us to the promenade which adorns its banks and the iron bridge spanning that ancient waterway. They take us onto the bridge to watch gulls flutter and fly as a boy shakes seed into the air. They also take us to fields and farms where a different seed is covered with soil and nurtured from the irrigated pathways linked to the river and its past. There's a symmetry to this place, just as there's a symmetry to the photographs, one that aligns our vision with their consciousness of place. And that's really the true intention, is to try to invest ourselves in an understanding of place through the consciousness of people who live there and understand it. So with that said, I'll share my screen and take you through a few images. There's 2 installation images, and this is a sampling. There are 46 images installed at PS118 on view right now, and I'm going to show you maybe about 15 or so. Yes. So, yikes. Let's start at the beginning. Why don't we? And I'll just, maybe 3 or 4 seconds, and I'll just cycle through them. And here's an installation view from PS118. It's a kind of an environmental installation. I included, kind of adorned the space with items and furniture that I felt like gestures to an Arab aesthetic. And the second, a wall inside. These images are framed kind of more traditionally, and just wanted to, so you had a sense for how they're installed and hung on the wall. So with that, I just, I'm going to thank everybody for being here. And as I give in a moment, let Noor say what she would like. I just, cannot underscore that this project was not possible without her energy and her skill and her administrative skills. So I'm very thankful to Noor for helping. We're all here because of her, and I think we all know that. So Noor, so the floor is yours if you'd like to say a few comments, and hopefully we can hear from the photographers.
Sure. Thank you very much, John, for allowing me to be part of this great project. First, if you don't mind, I would like to just give an overall for our photographers to understand what we were talking about in the introduction before I would say my comments. So if you would allow me a few minutes to translate that into Arabic, please. طبعا أولا نشكركم جميعا على حضوركم ويانا. طلبت من عندي ينطيني بعض الدقائق حتى أترجم لكم الكلام اللي تحدثنا عنه. رحب بكم مدير مهرجان كليك للتصوير وشكركم على وجودكم ويانا. انطى بصورة عامة ملخص عن المعرض، وانطى الأيام اللي موجود بالمعرض والصور وشوية باك جراوند عن المعرض نفسه، وبعدين فسح المجال لأستاذ جون حتى يتحدث قليلا عن المعرض. ذكر أستاذ جون أنه هذا المعرض هو شيء مغاير عن ما تقدمه الميديا بصورة عامة عن مدينة الفلوجة، أنه هي مدينة حرب ومدينة صراعات، ودائما نشوف الفلوجة من منطلق عسكري فقط. ننسى أنه مدينة الفلوجة هي مدينة عادية بها بشر يعيشون وناس يداومون وأمهات يطبخون لأولادهم. ننسى هذه الصورة بسبب الصورة الطابع التقليدي اللي تنطينا إياه الميديا. لذلك هو اشتغل على هذا المشروع حتى يبين إنه هي مدينة الفلوجة مدينة طبيعية حالها حال أي مدينة في العالم. وأيضا شكر وجودكم اليوم هنا ويانا وعلى العمل الرائع والصور الجميلة اللي بعثتوا لنا من مدينة الفلوجة. نشكركم كلش هواية. فلذلك أنا هسه شوي راح أحكي بالإنجليزي عن المشروع بصورة عامة، وبعدها ننتقل إلى بعض الأسئلة والأجوبة. أوكي، عندكم أي سؤال لحد هنا قبل ما نبدي؟ No? Okay. So thank you, John, for allowing me to kind of like recap in general of what we have talked about so they would have a sense on what we were discussing. Thank you all for being here, and especially our photographers who gave us those amazing images from Fallujah. Thank you, John. I was really honored to be working with you on this project. Since I came here to the US, I've always tried to find different ways of presenting in Iraq into this culture, which seems very different. Always people think of Iraq as a battlefield. They see it as a place that is that has no human being. It's just like you go there, it's a war zone, and you don't classify as a human, which is wrong. So I always try to jump into any project that kind of represents Iraq as a country where people can just say, oh, you live just like we live here, right? You eat bread, you drink milk, and you are no different than us. So thank you for allowing me again to be part of this project. When we started working on this project and we kind of like selected our photographers, John and I were amazed by the images were coming out from Fallujah. I mean, John have seen Fallujah himself. I've seen Fallujah, but the way that our photographers chose to present Fallujah through their lenses, through their eyes, it was just amazing. I mean, I knew the city was beautiful. I did not know it was this beautiful, right? When I asked our photographers of what were your incentive, why did you want represent Fallujah in this way? Each and every one of them who sits here with us today on this panel, they do have an amazing story behind those images that they have taken, behind every picture they have sent, because they had a specific message that they want to convey. They wanted to say, we're just human like you are, and this is our city, which all of them, they called it the city of peace. It's a peaceful city. It's not like what you hear outside. It's not like what the media is telling you. It's not like you watch on the news, that it's all bombs and killing and it's a war zone. It's not like that. This is Fallujah as you see it in those pictures. So I cannot stress enough how amazed I was by those images and by the skills that our photographers have, right? When we chose them, we chose them based on some kind of like it was selection, but their skills, I feel like, you know, you can get somewhere with those amazing skills. So thank you again for being here. Again, it's not my personally project. I'm here to help. It is You're the Stars here today. So we would love to hear more from them. So John, how do you want this to go? Do you want it to be questions and answers? Do you just want them to speak?
It's up to them. Yes, they can comment about their experience in the project so far, and you know, and how they feel about their work being presented in the United States. I think that'd be lovely.
Okay. اوكي سو شباب السؤال راح يكون هو مطروح بشكل عام وانتم يعني تقدرون تجاوبون عليه. كيف شفتوا تجربتكم هذه على وجه التحديد، وشنو كانت هي مشاعركم وانتم تشوفون الصور تنعرض في معرض، خلينا نقول في خارج العراق او في امريكا بالتحديد؟ اي واحد منكم يقدر يجاوب.
طبعا الشعور بالفخر اكيد.
اوكي ليش؟
انه وصلت رساله، انه انت وصلت رساله انه مدينه كانت مثل ما تقولين حرب وارهاب الى مدينه للسلام وحب والسلام كذا يعني.
Okay. So Mohamed said, I was very proud to see those images because I was sending a message that people think that Fallujah is a city of terrorism and war, but we showed it as the city of peace, and it's a peaceful city. So I was very proud to see those images. Okay, شكرا محمد. حارث؟
اي نعم. مرحبا ست.
أهلا وسهلا. هاي حارث.
والله يا ست نفس يعني محمد، هم بس فخر على المستوى المحلي وفخر على المستوى الدولي. يعني احنا تقريبا لما كتبنا البوستات اول يعني قدام يعني متابعينا وهذا، انه يعني كتبنا انه اول مشاركة دولية، يعني احس يعني شنو قدمنا شيء لفلوجة يعني كمدينتنا يعني اللي عايشين بيها. يعني انا بالنسبة لي يعني للريف مالتي قدمت الطبيعة يعني الطبيعة اللي هي تمتاز بها نهر الفرات والريف يعني اللي هي من ضمن الفلوجة.
Okay, شكرا حارث. So Harith he said, I would stress more the idea of Mohammed. I also felt proud because I was able to present Fallujah locally and internationally. And he said, even when I posted on social media, I was saying that this is our first international kind of involvement to represent Fallujah for them. And he said, on a personal level, I was able to show the rural area and the Tigris River. And it just made me feel very proud. شكرا حارث.
الفرات مو تايجرز.
Sorry, the Euphrates, sorry. The Euphrates River, yes. Okay, Sura أو محمد.
مساء الخير.
أهلا وسهلا سورا.
مرحبا بالجميع. إن شاء الله تكون الجميع بخير. الله يسلمكم. طبعا إنه حنعطيك مثل ما تفضل فخورين إنه إحنا هذا الفلوجة إنه قدرنا إنه نبين أو نوصل صورة للجانب الخارج العراق، إنه الأنبار أو الفلوجة بالصورة خاصة هي مو مدينة عسكرية، إنه هي مدينة مسالمة، الناس فيها ناس مسالمين، بها عيش، بها حياة حال أي مدينة ثانية، أي مدينة سواء بالعراق أي مدن الثانية. طبعا انه اكيد فخوره وفرحانه جدا انه وشعور ما يوصف انه بالحضور اللي كان موجود، بالتنظيم المعرض كان رائع جدا. فأكيد هي ما راح تتميز صورنا وتكون بصورة جميلة لو ما وجودكم وحضرة نور وأستاذ جون على إقامة هذا المعرض. فإحنا كلش شكورين لكم إنه قدرتوا توصلون صورة إنه صورة فلوجة مدينة أكيد بجهودنا وبجهودكم ويانا.
شكرا جزيلا سورا. Sura said I was also very proud that I was able to get this image outside of Iraq's border about Fallujah and tell the world that Fallujah is not a military area. It's a city just like any other city around the world that has a peaceful people who live there and they live normal life. And she said, I was very proud and happy, and I cannot describe my feeling enough. And I was very happy and proud of the organization of the galleries and the exhibit and of the people who have attended the gallery. And it said this would not be possible without the effort of Noor and Mr. John. And I am very thankful that you are able to help us to get this picture and image across to our audience on the other side of the world. شكرا جزيلا سورا. And Mohamed.
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام محمد، شلونك؟
الحمد لله، رغم انه ما اضافه ما حضيف حل، بس الحمد لله قدرنا نوصل رساله للعالم من خلالكم. الفضل للست نور والاستاذ جون، وبصراحه الشعور ما ينوصف اكيد، وان شاء الله القادم افضل.
شكرا جزيلا محمد. Mohamed also said that our goal was to get a message across to our audience, and we were able to do it through Noor and John. And she said, I cannot really describe my feeling, and inshallah, what comes is the best, or the coming, it will be better.
Yeah.
Okay, John, or.
No, I just wanted to say it was just lovely to see everybody, and thank you for participating. And not only in this Zoom, and I'm honored to be a part of this, but I just wanted to let Harith know that everybody who sees the picture of the boy wants to know who it is. So I thought maybe I would ask him now.
Okay. حارث يقول أولا طبعا هو سعيد إنه أنتم كلكم اليوم انضميتوا لنا بهذه المناقشة، ويقول دائما الأشخاص اللي يشوفون صورة الولد يسألون من هو هذا الولد؟
يسألون يسألون؟
يعني
الولد عبودي؟
هذا الولد من هو؟ أي هذا الولد من هو؟ فممكن أنت تقول لنا هذا من هو الولد، شنو قصته؟
الولد
اللي بالصورة، سوري، الولد اللي بالصورة.
البصورة يعني اللي عين غير بس عينه؟
ايه the one with the only one eye, right John?
Yes.
الصراحة يعني شوف يعني بس شوي يعني تاخذ دقائق.
Okay.
يعني هم ساكنين المنطقة، يعني احنا صوبنا يعني مثل هاي الجهة مال النهر بيننا وبينهم الفرات.
اوكي.
هم منطقة يسموها البعكاش، يعني المنطقة هم يعني بهاي التحرير مال داعش هم النكبة، يعني هم يعني مفقودين 1000 شخص من عندها، تقريبا 1500 واكثر يعني انفقدوا بعمليات التحرير. ف يعني هم نازحين نزحوا من هاي المنطقة، يعني افتروا على عامرية فلوجة وعلى المخيمات. اي بقوا هناك تقريبا بالمخيمات لحد ما صار التحرير. فهنا يعني جيراننا يصير قبل ابوهم يصير صديقه، يعني ابو ذول ابوه متوفي طبعا، وهو ذا ابوه متوفي، فهم اصدقاء من قبل. فصار يعني انه على المعرفه وهاي اللي بيناتهم. هو هذا الولد عنده قاعه هنا يعني على النهر، احنا تقريبا النهر منه 500 متر، يعني 300 متر يعني بيبعد هسه عن مكاني يعني. هم جيراني تقريبا بعد 200 متر، هم قريبين على الشط. اي فسكنوا، هذا الولد يعني انطاهم الارض، يعني سكنوا بيها، يعني فلاحين بيها، وهم يسكنون يعني شو اسمه جيراننا اللي هو يعني هم يعني الآباء متوفين، هم أصدقاء من قبل.
اوكي.
الأبناء يعني بيناتهم صار على معرفة الآباء، فاللي انطاهم أرض يعني يفلحون بها ويسكنون بها يعني مطمئنين، يعني لا مخيمات ولا داعش ولا ما أعرف إيش. اي فهم يعني عندهم عند ذول الاطفال عبودي وهذا الطفل تقريبا هم
اسمه هذا
عندهم يعني
الطفل اللي
تقريبا
تقصده؟
15
شنو؟
واحد، هم 4 اخوان، عندهم 15 واحد يعني. اي فهو هذا يصير ابن عم عبودي. عبودي هذا اللي شايل المعزه يصير ابن عم هذا الولد. اي فمره ظروف صادفت هاي، على شمس الغروب هو يعني واقف يسرح بالاغنام مالته يعني يرعاها، فقلت له يعني تعال خل اخذ لك صوره.
شنو اسمه هو
اي كان
حارث؟
يعني آه
تعرف اسمه لو لا؟
هذا
اذا ما
الولد
تعرف.
اسمه علي. علي
علي؟
علي.
اوكي.
ايه.
وابوه ليش توفى؟ يعني هو بالتحرير توفى؟
لا ابوه ما توفى، ابوه عايش.
ابو عبود اللي توفى؟
لا لا هم عايش يعني يعني ابو عبودي عايش وهذا ابو علاوي عايش. إيه فقلت لك هم يعني الاباء يعني اللي يعني شلون نقول الاجداد، تقدر تقولي الاجداد
اوكي.
يعني قبل كانت معرفه بيناتهم.
اوكي.
ايه هيك.
هم اللي كانوا عايشين على الجهة الثانية من الفرات وبعدين نزحوا، مو؟ بس حتى بالترجمة تكون واضحة.
نزحوا للجانب اي نعم، نجحوا عفوا نزحوا للضفه الثانيه، يعني هي عمرية الفلوجه تعتبر من هاي الجهه. وجوي هنا سكنوا يعني بهاي الجهه يعني بهاي الضفه.
Okay, John, so he was explaining to me their kind of like background and story. So the families are like 4 brothers, okay, like the fathers of those kids in the picture. So they used to live across the Euphrates from where Harith lived. But then during liberation from ISIS, he said a lot of people died around, still like around 1,500 are still missing. So a lot of people got displaced. So they moved to the other side of the Euphrates where Harith lived now. And he said, you know, there's another picture where this little kid was carrying a goat. This is his cousin and his name is Ali. And he said it was a day where I was looking at this beautiful sunset and he was standing there and I said, come, let me take a picture of you. So he took a picture of him.
Lovely. Thank you. شكرا.
العفو.
Okay, any other question, John or Bryce, for our photographers?
No, Bryce, is there any?
I certainly have a couple of questions.
Please.
I'll try to ask them one at a time.
Okay.
What I would love to know from any or all of the photographers is how did they first come to the medium of photography, and when did they discover what a powerful tool that is to communicate the message they want to communicate about Fallujah?
Great question. Okay, so أستاذ برايس عنده سؤال لكم. السؤال يقول إنه شو وقت كانت بداياتكم بالتصوير؟ شو وقت اكتشفت إنه الكاميرا هي فد أداة جدا يعني جيدة حتى أنت تقدر من خلال الكاميرا أو التصوير تقدر تبعث مسج للعالم؟ شو وقت بديت تكتشف هذه الظاهرة أو هذه الأفكار عندك تتكون؟ فأي واحد من عندكم يقدر يجاوب. طبعا بالأخير إحنا نريدكم أربعتكم تجاوبون.
عادي ممكن أجاوب؟
تفضل حارث.
يعني أنا سنة 2014 يعني بداية سنة 2014 فخاله هو يعني مقيم بالنرويج، فبعث لي هدية جالكسي S4 يعني كان وقتها أكتب. فيعني شلون كانت تحفيزه كهدية، يعني شلون بدأ أول كلية يعني سمع بي إنه أنا راح أدخل كلية فدز لي هذا الجهاز. فبديتها يعني أول صورة أخذتها يعني كانت بالشتاء يعني كلش حلوة، يعني طلعت بالتليفون. هو الجالكسي أقوى من الآيفون بالصور. يعني كانت كلش حلوة. بعد ظليت أصور تقريبا يعني مو كلش، حتى ما وصلت ال 100 صورة. ودخل داعش. لما دخل داعش صار النزوح، نزحنا للشمال، شمال العراق. وهناك هم استمريت يعني أصور وأنزل صور. هاي تقريبا 3 سنوات يعني النزوح الشمال. من رجعنا هنا يعني الفلوجة، هم بديت أصور يعني. رجعت على نفس يعني شوية يعني الخبرة هاي 3 سنوات اللي بالشمال، ولا يعني ما كانت يعني مثل هنا يعني تختلف. الشمال اللي كنا احنا بأربيل هي مدينة، وهنا ريف. اي فالمشكلة النقطة اللي اريد اذكرها، يعني هسه مرحلة داعش يعني نشأ جيل. يعني مرحلة داعش تقريبا طول 3 سنوات. يعني نشأ جيل لازم همي أنا أقعد أني أصور، أو يعني من أنا أصور يعني لما أنزل صور عن انستغرام عن الريف وهذا. وهي الفلوجة أصلا يعني مرت بحرب داعش ويعتبروها يعني اكو فئة من المجتمع يعتبروها إرهابيين صراحة، يعني واحد يحكيها. فبدينا نواجه المشكلة يعني كل ما نشوف صورة، ها متأكد هاي الفلوجة؟ معقول هاي الفلوجة؟ يعني همينا مستغربين. يعني الجيل اللي هو مر يعني مثل مرحلة البلوغ 15 سنة، مثلا 3 سنوات جت داعش صار 18 سنة، يعني وصل مرحلة البلوغ وهو يعني ماخذ صورة بباله انه الفلوجة هم مدينة ارهاب، وهي اللي اوت داعش وهم كلهم دواعش، ويعني الحاضنة مال داعش. فصراحة هم يعني يعني من خلال التصوير هم قدرنا يعني شوية يعني نكسر هذا الحاجز عند الناس. يعني مو بس عند صراحة مو يعني بس عند الأمريكان بوقتها، يعني لما صارت حرب الفلوجة. يعني حرب داعش هم خلت عند المجتمع العراقي فد ردة فعل تجاه الفلوجة، وصورة نمطية يجوز أصعب وأكثر يعني شلون أقول، أكثر تعقيد من حرب يعني بوقتها حرب الفلوجة وحرب الأمريكان.
Mhm. شكرا حارث. So Harith was telling us the story of how he started to getting into the photography. He said after he finished his high school in 2014, his uncle in Norway, he sent him a gift, and it was a Galaxy phone. And he said, well, I took my first picture in winter in the rural area, and I thought it was very beautiful. And then he said, and then ISIS came to the city, so they had to be displaced. So they went to live in Kurdistan. Kurdistan مو بأربيل حارث صح؟ عشتوا؟ Yeah, so they were displaced to live in Arbil, Kurdistan. And he said over there, I continued to take pictures, and I was getting more into photography, and he was there for 3 years. And then he said, you know, doing photography in the city is different than doing photography in the rural area. So when after, you know, it was liberated from ISIS, they returned back to Fallujah. And he said, the more I was taking picture in the rural area, the more I was falling in love with those images that were coming out. And he said, the problem is now we have in Iraq is that, for example, if you have somebody who was 15 years old when ISIS came, and after the liberation, this person is 18 years old now, right? So this person grew up believing that Fallujah is a city that kind of like welcomed ISIS, that or it was a hub for Al-Qaeda. So he said, this problem, we don't have it only across the borders in the outside world after the war of Fallujah on Iraq in 2004. He said, this problem, we also have it in Iraq within the Iraqi society, where you do have some people who do believe that Fallujah is the hub for terrorism and the hub for ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And he said, the more pictures I was taking and posting, and I used to see some people from Iraq that say, oh, is this really Fallujah? He said, I started to realize that I was sending a message that, yes, this is Fallujah that you hear about as a hub for terrorism. It is not what you think anymore, you know? And he said, that's why through photography, I was able to break that kind of like the idea within the Iraqi society, not only for the American or the outside world. And he said, we still face these difficulties within the society to kind of trying to break this image about Fallujah, but he's happy with what he's doing because through that, he was able to send beautiful messages. Thank you very much حارث، شكرا جزيلا. اوكي محمد أو سورة، نحب نسمع من عندكم.
راح أجيب شيء مختصر ست.
تفضل.
بدايتي بالتصوير عام 2018 يعني من رجعت للمدينة شفت الدمار الحاصل بيها والدمار يعني بالمدينة، وأيضا هم سمعة المدينة مثل ما قال حارث إنه مدينة الفلوجة إرهاب داعش قتل يعني هاي المسميات. كان عندي موبايل S3 فأصور به، بقيت أصور أنشر عبر التواصل الاجتماعي إنه قالوا إنه هاي الفلوجة قلت لهم هي هاي الفلوجة يعني ما بها أي إرهاب، إنه تحررت المدينة ورجعت الحياة طبيعية. فاستمريت على هذا المنوال بالموبايل، ما مثل ما تقول كونت نفسي أو جمعت فلوس، اشتريت كاميرا وقمت أنشر. الحمد لله يعني السباق كل المحافظات متابعين على التواصل الاجتماعي وانشر لهم صور الفلوجة، قالوا إنه الفلوجة عادت والحمد لله.
Okay, ممتاز محمد، شكرا جزيلا. So Mohamed said, my beginning it was in 2018 after I returned to the city of Fallujah. So Mohamed also was displaced and he returned to the city in 2018 after it was liberated from ISIS. He said, I've seen all the destruction that happened in the city. And also, as Harith explained, the idea of Fallujah being a hub for terrorism and Al-Qaeda and ISIS, he said, I wanted to kind of like send different message about the city. So he started to do photography in his phone. And he said, I was taking pictures and posting on social media. And then people started to question or like, oh, is this really Fallujah? There is no terrorism. There is no killing. There is no ISIS. And he said, I was explaining that Fallujah was liberated and we live normal life here and it's not like what many people think. And he said, I've continued doing that with my phone until I was able to save up some money and buy my own camera. And then he started, or he continued to post through social media. And he said people from different provinces, they started following me and they started to really enjoy learning different things about Fallujah, not only what they hear on media. So he also was able to send a message through his photography. Thank you, Mohammed. شكرا جزيلا, Mohammed. Okay, Mohamed Jamal.
نعم، أنا بلشت بالتصوير من سنة 2019. نجحت من السادس إعدادي، بلشت بها كانت بداية بتليفون نوت 9. رحت الهيت، داومت بالكلية، بلشت من هناك أصور وأنشر صور، لأن الهيت مدينة ريفية حيل حلوة بالتصوير. ومن هناك هم بلشت قبل سنتين تقريبا.
اوكي 2019. اوكي، وشنو كانت غايتك محمد؟
كانت غايتي اوصل الصور عند العالم يشوفوها.
اوكي، شكرا جزيلا محمد. Okay, Mohammed said he started in 2019 when he was in the city called Heat in Iraq, and he said this city is also a rural, it's a rural place there. And he said, I started taking pictures and posting on social media because it was very beautiful. And the purpose was to send a message to the world to see also about how beautiful the city is. Okay, شكرا جزيلا محمد. سورة.
نعم، الصراحة أنه علاقتي بالتصوير من أنا صغيرة، أنه أهلي كانوا يمتلكون كاميرا، كانت الكاميرا الفورية، بعدها الكاميرا الأفلام. لما وصل وقت ظهور التليفونات بالكاميرا، بهذا الوقت أنه قلت استخدام الكاميرا فقط على الموبايل. لغاية 2012 امتلكت أول كاميرا احترافية. من ما أنا بديت إنه مو بس إنه أخذ صورة طبيعية إنه إحنا كعلاقتنا بالبيت أو سفراتنا، لا، بديت إنه أكون صور، أشتغل أكثر يعني على نفسي. دخلت جروب على الفيسبوك بها معلومات على التصوير، أسرار التصوير، فكنت أخذ يعني بعض المقتطفات من عندها. بديت إنه أصور حياة الشارع، حياة المدن، صورت الطعام، صورت الحياة الصامتة. صح إنه جزء أكو أغلب صور إنه أنا ما ناشرتها، بس إنه أنا حاولت إنه أجرب كل أنواع التصوير. آخر شيء إنه وجدت نفسي إنه بتصوير المدن آه، بها لذة خاصة عن باقي الصور، يعني عن أو باقي الأنواع الثانية. بهذه إنه قدرت إنه أوصل صورة فخلاص. طبعا بال2012 أو من ظهرت الكاميرات، مو فقط إنه بالأنبار، بس إنه كعراق بصورة عامة كان قليل الكابينات إنه يمتلك تكون كاميرات. بس إنه أنا انتهيت فترة كان دراستي فانقطعت عن التصوير. أنا كملت فترة الدراسة ورجعت مرة ثانية إنه أصور وأنشر مثل ما تتابعون.
شنو كانت الغاية سورة؟ أنت ذكرتي إنه وقعتي بحب تصوير المدن بشكل خاص، شنو السبب؟
السبب إنه كان قليل إنه نشوف صور للمدن صورت بالأنبار، صورت بغداد، صورت بأربيل. الكاميرتي وين ما أروح الكاميرا وياي. حتى آخر فترة كنت مسافرة لبريطانيا الكاميرا طبعا ما فارقتني. أحب إنه أصور الحياة الطبيعية، إنه لأن أغلب حاليا التصوير اللي دا يصير دا يتوجهون لتصوير الأعراس أو البورتريت أو الحياة أو الطعام كذا شيء. بس كمدن حسيتها قليلة يعني تتواجد، وخاصة إنه كبنات ويطلعون يصورون كمدن ممكن شوية صعبة بمجتمعنا. طبعا وجودي يعني خاصة من صورت بالفلوجة من عمود المعرض عانيت بالموضوع صراحة. بس الحمد لله إنه قدرت إنه أطلع صور حلوة وعجبتكم
ليش
وعجبت الحضارة اللي
عانيتي؟
كانوا
سورة، شنو
موجودين.
المعاناة اللي عانيتيها؟
معاناة إنه أنا كوني فتاة وشايلة كاميرا دخلت للسوق الفلوجة، يعني سمعت كلام بس ما اهتميت صراحة. إنه أنا عندي غايتي إنه أنا أريد أصور، أنا أريد بالعكس أنا أريد أظهر الفلوجة غير اللي هي معروف عنها. فقلت خلاص أنا ما أهتم بكلامهم، أصور اللي أنا يعجبني. والدي وياي طبعا هو الداعم الأول إلي، فما زال والدي وياي يعني خلاص أنا ما بسوي شيء غلط. أنا مجرد أنقل صورة من داخل منطقة محافظة إلى مكان مفتوح.
Okay, شكرا جزيلا سورة. So Sura said, my relationship with the camera was since I was little. My family had possessed different type of cameras. And then I started having my own camera in 2012. And before that, she used phone also to do photography. And she said, I started taking different type of pictures for like picnics and families. And then even she worked taking pictures for food. And then she said, I wanted to develop myself because I have passion. So she joined some groups on social media that taught her kind of like little tricks about photography, how to take good pictures and stuff like that. And she said, but in particular, I fell in love with doing photographies inside cities because not many people do care about taking pictures inside the cities, especially in Iraq. Most people will care about taking pictures for weddings and like family pictures, but cities are not much kind of like people do care about it. And she said, I was only one of the few girls who were actually carrying cameras and taking pictures. And I asked her, why you fell in love with kind of like taking pictures inside the city? She said, I don't know. I just thought it was different. And she was in the UK, I think recently. She said, I've taken my camera with me. I was taking pictures inside the city. She said, I love this normal life. I love looking at people and kind of like taking pictures. And she said, even when I was taking picture for this project inside the city, it was a great struggle. And I said, okay, hold on. Why you said it was a great struggle? She said, because going to a market in Fallujah, being a girl carrying a camera, you don't see that there, you know? So she said, I've heard a lot of words, but at the end of the day, I did not care because my father was with me. He was the main supporter for me. And I just thought to myself, if I want to send a picture about this city, why do I care about what people would say? So I just continued taking pictures, and the result, as we have seen, amazing. شكرا جزيلا سورا.
Amazing. That's great.
Okay.
I have another question, John, unless you have one.
No, if I can, I just want to share my screen one more time because I'd like to pull up one of Sura's images. Because as I looked at the image, I became intrigued by this one man that I felt that was looking at her. So if I just share my screen briefly and to show you one of Sura's images, and I kind of get that sense that people were looking at her antagonistically.
اوكي سورة راح يطلع وحده من الصور اللي انت ماخذتها. يقول اتصور انه بوحده من هذه الصور الرجال كان يباوع عليك او على الكاميرا، فراح يطلعوا صورة يمكن عنده سؤال.
نعم.
اوكي تمام.
So here we are in the market, in Fallujah's market, and I thought this man in the back wearing a yellow T-shirt was looking at her a bit angrily.
سورة شنو جوابك؟ هذا كان يباوع عليك انه تاخذين صور لو شنو؟
اي لاحظوني انه انا شايل الكاميرا ودا اصور. بس هنا ما عارضوا صراحه. الصوره الثانيه اكو طفل، والصوره الثانيه اكو طفل، بالعكس والده هو اللي والد الطفل يقول له بابا على الكاميرا، يعني يخليه يلاحظ ينتبه انه انا واقفه داخل الصوره. بس اكو بعض الاشخاص لا هم اللي شفتهم دا يستهزئون صراحه يعني.
Okay, so yes, she said, you know, the man with the T-shirt was looking at her because she was carrying a camera and trying to take a picture in such a place. She said, but they did not object or say anything. This little guy on the bike, she said his father was encouraging him and telling him, look, she's taking picture, look at the camera. She said, while others were just making fun of me because I was carrying camera and taking pictures.
Well, I'll just I like to say to Sura that I think this is a wonderful image, that she's captured so many layers of activity and gesture, and just on pure photography standards. We always like it when we're doing documentary work not to have people posing for the camera, but to catch them in the act of life. And I think she's wildly succeeded in this image.
Okay. سورة يقول أنا برأيي أتوقع هذه الصورة جدا عظيمة، لأنه اللقطة اللي ماخذتها أنت لعدة أشخاص دي يسوون عدة أمور في وقت واحد. يقولوا خاصة إحنا مثلا لما بمشاريع الأفلام الوثائقية دائما نقول خلي الصورة تكون طبيعية، لا نقول للشخص المقابل نسوي فلان شيء أو سوي فلان شيء، خليها تكون على طبيعتها. يقولوا هذا اللي ألاحظه بالصورة، أنه هواي امور دا تصير في نفس الوقت بس كلها طبيعيه، ما حد انه متصنع دا يسويها.
صحيح. انا صراحه احب انه اخذ اغلب الصور انه تكون عفويه، حتى بصور يعني مرات اقربائي يعني من عندهم صور خاصه او مناسبات، اقول لهم لا تنظروا على الكاميرا، خلاص خليكم عفويين، انا حاخذ صور اذا يعني اقول لكم انتبهوا بس انه خليكم عفويين. اغلب الصور تطلع كلش حلوه، انه كلها عفويه هيك بدون تملق بدون انتباه بدون ما اعرف يعني يكون صح احلى.
شد عصبي بدون شد عصبي.
So Sura said she agrees to your point, Bryce, and she says I sometimes when I have like photo sessions for like families and when we have occasions, I tell people don't notice that the camera is there, just do whatever you're doing, and I just capture that moment and take that image, and instead of like sitting there it will have a different perspective when it's natural. So she also liked that.
Great.
عظيم سورة.
Thank you.
If I may, at this point, what I got out of seeing this whole show were so many images of just stunning and often surprising, just beauty and joy. And a couple that spring to mind right away is that wonderful image of the lone biker on the isolated road in the rural landscape, which I never would have expected to see. And then another is the guy beating the drum on the street with the little almost mini parade of children, which, Nor, as you've said, life is like any other city. I could have seen that event in my hometown of New Orleans. you know, and to see those kinds of images were so surprising to me. I think it's so important that they share that. But I guess my question would be to each of them, what would be the singular most important or successful subject that they point their camera at? Is it the beauty of the landscape? Is it the life? For each of them, do they have a singular subject that they really want to capture and share with the world?
Great question, Bryce. Okay, so أستاذ برايس هنا يتكلم عن يقول يعني أغلب الصور كانت رائعة وعظيمة ومفرحة وكثير تشد الشخص لما يباع لها لعدة أسباب. يقول مثلا أكو صورة شخص على البايسكل دا يمشي أصور في طريق يعني فارغ. يقول أكو صورة ثانية الشخص اللي دا يدق على مثل هذا بالماجينة يا ماجينة ماكو يمكن هذه الدرام. يقول فهذه إنه صورة تبين لنا إنه هي مدينة طبيعية. هذه الصور إحنا ممكن نشوفها هنا بأمريكا، ممكن نشوف واحد على البايسكل بأمريكا، إنه أكو هواي شغلات متشابهة. فالسؤال لكم أنتم كمصورين، شنو الشغلة الوحدة أو المشروع الواحد أو الفكرة الوحيدة اللي يعجبكم توجهون كاميرتكم عليها؟ يعني مثلا سورة تقول أني دائما أحب أوجه، يعني تقريبا أنتم جاوبتوا هذا السؤال بأجوبة ضمنية. أحب أوجه كاميرتي حتى ألتقط فلان شغلة، هذه أكثر شغلة تشدني. شنو ممكن الشغلة الوحدة اللي تقولوها؟
بالنسبة لي يا ست إنه أصور حياة الناس وحياة الشارع حتى أبقى إنه أرشيف للمدينة كأرشيف قديم، وما إنه أصور حياة العالم إنه شلون يروحون للسوق، شلون يشتغلون، شنو هاي المهنة. خاصة أنا أحب المهنة القديمة، أحب أصورها دائما.
Okay, ممتاز. So Mohamed say, I like to picture life in the streets because I want it to be as an archive for the city, that one day it will be an old archive that can be mentioned about Fallujah. And he also liked to picture the old career of man who works in the market.
Love it.
So that's the, yeah, it's beautiful.
Beautiful.
شكرا. Okay. سورة حارث محمد.
اي نعم.
حارث.
صراحة هو اللي يخلي واحد يعني يستمر بالتصوير. يعني كل ما أنسأل يعني هالصور الفلوجة يعني يصير حافز لي إنه أقدم صور أكثر للفلوجة يعني بالنسبة للريف. وهسه حاليا دا أفكر إنه يعني أصور يعني حياة الناس بالريف، يعني الأشخاص يعني نفسهم شلون يعني حياتهم شلون يعيشون، يعني اللي الأشياء اللي يستخدموها يعني كفلاح، شنو اللي يستخدمه فد شيء. يعني هذا شو ينطي انطباع.
خلينا نقول إذا كاميرتك تحب الريف.
أي نعم.
أوكي ممتاز. وهذا اللي أنا توقعته، يعني أنا تقول لهم جوابي عن حارث هو الريف. So Harith says the rural area, and I joked with him and I said I was about to answer for you and say rural area. You know, I said this is for Harith. So he said I love to picture the rural area, and not only like nature, but I would love to do like people and the way they live as well. Okay, shukran.
Yeah, and he said that before, right? And when he was displaced, how he came to see and appreciate that, and it really comes through in his images, and they're quite beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. يقولوا احنا نشوف هذا الشغف موجود بصورك، وهو شيء جدا جميل يعني. شكرا حارث. اوكي سورة.
بالنسبة لي صراحة أنا أحب أصور، أنا شكو مكان قدامي أحب أصوره، بس خاصة إذا مناطق أثرية أو فد أشياء يعني غريبة موجودة بالمكان، أحب أوثق كل شيء صراحة يعني.
سورة قبل شوي ذكرتي المدن، تحبين توثقين
نعم.
الأشياء داخل المدن، إيش الأشياء الغريبة داخل المدن؟
يعني الأشياء التراثية أو الأثرية، مثلا عندي صورة عن سيارة قديمة بداخل هيكل موجودة بالحبانية. عندي صورة آثار النواعير القديمة بهيت. عندي للشوارع القديمة براوة. فأنا تقريبا مفترة أغلب مدن الأنبار، فأحب إنه أخذ صور أحتفظ بها، بس إنه تكون للمناطق منطق إنه الأشياء التراثية القديمة إنه تكون لها لذة أو
بيها
طابع
قصص.
خاص.
فيها قصص مو
صح.
Okay, shukran, Sura. So Sura, she said, as she has mentioned earlier, she has this particular love for cities. However, she said, I like to look for weird, strange, ancient things that are in the city. For example, she mentioned that she had a picture, I think, of a car that was bombed and was neglected inside the city. So she said those things are rare things that they tell stories that maybe were very neglected, nobody paid attention to them inside the city. That's where her camera liked to go.
Well, I can speak to, I'm the same way, Sura. I love the contradictions in my own photographs. But I know she also mentioned she shoots weddings and things like that. Not a lot of that shows up in this exhibition. Things like what we might consider to be mundane, weddings or birthday parties or gatherings. I think that kind of content too would also enrich this project. And I know she shoots it. So I know that I would like to see more of that.
Yeah, see, Bryce, and just kind of like having a knowledge of the culture, that might be a problem sharing those images, because that's why they hire a female photographer. So those pictures will be seen only by a female, not a male. So that's why it's kind of like really hard to get a family to agree to share maybe a picture or two.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah. سورة كان بدي يحكي يقول يعني أنت أيضا ذكرتي إنه تحبين تصورين الشغلات العائلية أو صور أعراس أو أعياد ميلاد. يقول كنا نحب نشوف هاي الصور موجودة، فشرحت له إنه ثقافيا من الصعب جدا مشاركة هذه الصور، لأنه لذلك هم يختارون مرة حتى تصور على مود الصورة ما تطلع. صح؟
صح. عاشا سيدي.
Yes, that's right. She agrees. اوكي محمد، ما سمعنا منك.
اكثر شيء التصوير حبيت الطبيعه، الحيوانات، احب حيل بالتصوير الحياه البريه. شغف حيل طموحي لي حيل اذا اصير بالمستقبل مصور حياه بريه.
ممتاز. So Mohamed said he loves nature and especially animals. He said this is my dream and passion to really in the future you know, kind of like just be a photographer in that field, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, shukran, Mohamed.
Any other questions or comments?
أي سؤال عندكم أو أي تعليق، أي شيء تحبون تضيفوه؟
لا شكرا.
No, thank you.
No, I think that you all started something very important here.
Yeah.
That will continue. You're at the ground level of starting something important.
Yeah. Well, I would echo that, and that we're so glad that John, you and Nor made this happen. We're so glad PAS 18 chose to share that. We were so glad to have that as part of our festival. We're so honored to have John, you, Nor, and these photographers join us today. It's a rare treat, and we certainly hope that you continue to do this work, and we hope you continue to share it, and we get to see more in the future. It's really a wonderful project, and I wish you all the best of luck on it.
Thank you, Bryce. أستاذ جون يقول أنتم بديتوا شيء جدا مهم وجدا عظيم، وإحنا راح نستمر بالعمل على مشاريع أخرى مشابهة، مو فقط طبعا إن شاء الله الفلوجة وأيضا مدن العراق الأخرى. يقول فأنتوا الحجر الأساسي اللي وضعتوه بهذا المشروع اللي راح يستمر إن شاء الله. أستاذ برايس يشكركم على وجودكم وعلى الصور العظيمة اللي شاركتوها ويانا حتى نقدر نوصل فد صورة وفد رسالة معينة. فيقول أتمنى أولاً يتمنى لكم حظ سعيد، ويتمنى إنه إحنا نستمر نشوف هذه الصور الجميلة اللي تحاولون تنقلوها حتى توصلون بها رسالة عظيمة عن مدينة الفلوجة. فشكراً إنه اليوم أنتم انضميتوا ويانا.
شكراً جزيلاً لكم.
Thank you very much.
ست نور، إذا يريد يعني مثل الأستاذ برايس، يعني إذا يعني جروب نسوي وندز صور يعني اللي ما شاف يعني أعتقد أكو صور يعني سيد جون هو اختار صور معينة وعرضها فأكو صور هو يمكن يعني جزء يعني احتمال ما أعرف يعني
اوكي
تعجبه أو صور جديدة مثلا ممكن ناخذها ونلتقطها يعني إذا يريد يحب يشوفها إحنا ما عندنا مشكلة ما أعرف البقية.
So Bryce, Harith is saying that we'll be more than happy to share more pictures with you. The one that we currently have and or future pictures, we would love to share them with you. So he was wondering of how could he do that? Do you want to start a group or do you want them?
Yeah. Let me think of the best way to do that, whether it's a group or a Facebook page or Dropbox, but whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Well, this has been wonderful. So glad we did this. You can also tell everyone this has been recorded and I am going to post it on, we have a YouTube archive of our talks. And so when that's posted, I'll share with them a link to it so then they can share this talk with their friends and community as well.
Okay, great. يقول أولاً هذه المقابلة أو المناقشة هي مسجلة، أوكي؟ فبس تكون متوفرة راح يبعث لكم اللينك وتكون ينزلوها على اليوتيوب فتقدرون تشاركوها ويا أهلكم ويا أصدقائكم أي أحد تحبون تشاركون اللينك وياه. Okay?
Wonderful.
Okay.
All right, well, I think we can maybe wrap this up. Thanks again to everybody for being here, for all your hard work, and all your great work. Thank you very much, everyone.
شكرا جميعا لوجودكم هنا ولشغلكم العظيم والرائع. نشكركم جزيل الشكر. شكرا.
سلام.
مع السلامة guys.
Shalom.
مع السلامة.
مع السلامة.
But I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the background of the project, you know, how it arose, and why I think it matters, and why I hope it matters to other people, I guess. And so I was kind of flipping through this book and just seeing what some people have read, and I see this one lady, Shannon, at one point wrote, "I'm guilty of only knowing about the city from the news and the war. I'm so glad to have another image of this. Thank you, Shannon." You know, and then really that's the whole idea, was just to provide another cultural text to draw from and to conceptualize what Fallujah means through the eyes of someone who lives there, from their perspective. And so there's 4 photographers that were featured in this exhibit that we kind of recruited from Iraq. Mohamed Alani Mohamed Jamal, Sura Jasim, and Harith Kaleel. And they live in Fallujah with the exception of Sura. She lives in Hamaniya, a little bit further west than Fallujah. And we just asked them, I just asked them simply, hey, I'm interested in introducing Fallujah to American audiences, and so just please make pictures of Fallujah, and that's it. Simple as that. And they ask questions like, do you want me to make pictures of the destruction? And I just, no, I just want you to make pictures of Fallujah. So they were moving through Fallujah kind of with the consciousness that whatever image they make could potentially be shown in the United States. And so with the exception of the 2 images that are printed on phototext in black and white, polyester fabric, all of the images are made from Fallujah. And I do want to briefly talk about those kind of images very quickly. You notice this image here, for instance, was made in 2004 by a Marine Corps photographer, as was the image of the Old Iron Bridge or the Lower Bridge or the King Faisal Bridge, as it's known in Fallujah. They were both made by Marine Corps photographers in 2004. And I found them, I called them or scraped them from Wikipedia. The military releases images into the public domain. In fact, this image here you'll find in multiple places. The West Point actually uses it as its signature image for their modern warfare. podcast for the Fallujah, Second Battle of Fallujah page, for instance. The Marine Corps History Department borrows that image and uses it in their history as well. And I actually found these images not associated with the war, but associated with the city itself. So if you look up Fallujah, Iraq on Wikipedia, you'll see these images, militarized images of the city. And that's really the idea. So and what does it mean that if our impression of Fallujah, the only possibility, if you look on Wikipedia, is a militarized city? And it's clearly not militarized. Like I wrote, these people living in Fallujah now, as everybody else, wants what we all want, the chance to just peaceably choose our lives. And it's as simple as that, and it's not more complex. And so, as the idea was, I had all these images. They sent, when we put out the call for artists, I think we had 19 prospective photographers respond within the first 24 hours. Eventually 31, so from the 31, we kind of chose about 5 or 6 that we thought would be, great for the project. And 4 of those, agreed and wanted to do it. And they submitted a total of about 120 images. I kind of culled that down to about 70 that I was thinking about. And then what you see here are 46. And the idea is I wanted to get as many images as I possibly could into the space. And so that's the reason why I decided to kind of use an environmental installation to kind of evoke a kind of vernacular mode and a vernacular method of viewing and looking at photographs. So that's really about it. If you have any questions about the project, I'd love to answer them for you. But as with any endeavor, you learn as you go, and people share stories at different times that surprise you and humble you. And one of the things here is that Mohamed Alani was born in 1996, for instance, in Fallujah. He left with his family and relocated to another region of Iraq during the battles. And there were 3 battles, or 3 assaults fought in Fallujah by the American, 2 by the American military, 1 by ISIS. And he basically returned to the city in, I think, 2018. So the work that you see is not only from Fallujah, but it's his reintroduction to the city that he left as a child. And I think that adds a special kind of gravitas to what we see. And Sura, of course, is the only female photographer, and I point over there because there's 3 or 5 of her images are in here as well. And she had told me that it was difficult for her to be moving around Fallujah with a camera because she is a woman. And so I wanted to mention that because I think it takes a special courage to do that. And so I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. That's it. Enjoy the work.
I guess so it's not a common thing for in current day Iraq for a woman to be out taking pictures.
I think it varies per region, but I will share Sura's words that in a closed tribal society, I found it difficult, and that's what she said.
The difference between the framed ones and the ones that are on print that are tactile and you can hold. I'm curious about the decision of presenting them in those 2 different modes. And then the other question has to do with when they gave you these photographs, did they voice some that they thought did they prioritize them in any way, or did they leave that totally up to you?
Well, they left that totally up to me, but what I did was that we had a Google Meet conference after I kind of selected the images and I showed them the images. Harith was thrilled that I chose the image of the boy, and he made this image here. And that's an important image to me for many reasons, and I can talk about that in a moment. Sura had said, "Oh, I thought you would have chose this, and you didn't." And then I asked what image it was, and I ended up choosing the same site, but from a different photographer. And one of the things I found very interesting here is that some of the photographers were going to the same location. Like right here, these are two different photographers making images at the same location. I find that very interesting. And as to the different modes, and I do think that, I think you can maybe elicit a different type of response with an audience if you change the method of viewing. And I think bringing it into a domestic space is really a metaphor for literally what I'm trying to do here. And that is to introduce an Iraqi perspective in an American space. I want to put an Iraqi perspective in American living rooms. And that was kind of the metaphor that I was thinking about as I came up with that idea. But one more point, and it's a practical point. I wanted to get as many images as possible as I could, and I felt like if I could just print them and lay them down, and that people would be willing to pick them up, look at them, interact with them, and I can introduce more images into the exhibit, and that was important to me. Taylor?
So as you were narrowing them down, what were your selection criteria? How did you decide? And was it just, how much of it was aesthetic, how much of it was content, and or was it just kind of going by feel?
A lot of it's aesthetic. I mean, I think there's these kind of visual associations, and there's thematic associations. And I think one of the reason why I started here like this is I was just kind of intrigued by this kind of juxtaposition here. And this is a Marine Corps photographer on the same street in 2004 making up pictures at a distance from Marines walking away from him. And it is a him. This Mohamed Alani is standing on that same street in a different direction in front of the Iraqi people that are walking toward him. And I thought, that's an interesting juxtaposition. And I think that, and I felt like if there is a story, if pictures can tell a story, then it might start here. And then I kind of just stuck this one down here at the bottom because I didn't want to suggest that this begins a story. If this story does begin and does have an ending, it begins with people. Right? And so that's why I have the old iron bridge all the way to the end. Because that cluster of it, that's the incident that occurred there is kind of what brought Fallujah into American consciousness. That's how it became a site of memory, really, for Americans. And so that's why I didn't want to, begin there. Instead, I ended there.
Can you describe what happened at that bridge? I don't know.
What's that?
What happened at the bridge?
Well, shall we slide down this way? Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, so this is the Old Iron Bridge in Fallujah. It was built, or sometimes called the King Faisal Bridge, because Faisal was the Syrian royalty who was installed as the first kind of head of state of Iraq after the British mandate ended in post-World War I, right? And so this bridge was built in 1935. It's a truss bridge, British design. And it was the first bridge in Fallujah, actually connecting it with the peninsula, which is kind of another part geographically of the city. And so it has a history in Iraq. Marines called it the Brooklyn Bridge. And I find that interesting as well, the way we appropriate a naming convention to incorporate it into our memory field, right? But anyway, 4 Blackwater contractors were killed and assassinated in Fallujah in 2004. And their bodies were desecrated and hung from this bridge. And that's kind of what brought it into American consciousness. In fact, it became a site of memory. Fallujah became very polarized at that time. Many Americans were kind of responding to that scene. And so that's contributed to, and in fact, the battles that were fought there were an act of revenge, essentially, for them. And so I wanted to include it because some of the Iraqi photographers made pictures. And so you see one right here. I mean, the visual association is quite clear. This as well, but you wouldn't recognize this as being the Old Iron Bridge. But the photographer, Mohamed Jamal, who has aspirations of being a landscape photographer, by the way, is standing on the bridge, looking at the embankment. And here Mohamed Alani is on the promenade, which is right here. One side of the promenade, the other side is the kind of wild. So it's kind of a way in which these photographers are engaging with the site that intrigued me. And that, yeah, you know, I just, you know, photography is tricky business, you know. I think oftentimes we ask images to do too much, you know. I don't think we can parse meaning from any one image without thinking about it in context, about thinking the consciousness of the photographer, how the discourse or how it is textualized and contextualized in the public spaces over time. All that matters. And this image is a bit different though, because it's an image of a boy and an eye. So there's that kind of metaphor and that play on vision, right, that is here. And there's an imbalance to photography. Like for right now, this gentleman's making pictures of me as I'm talking. So he's in the position of power, I'm not. Because I don't know what's going to happen with that image. Right? But this boy, he's looking right back. And I like that. There's something like claiming his voice in that image. And so is he looking at the photographer? Yes, obviously. But is he looking at us? I feel like he's looking at us, and I'm projecting onto the image, and that's why they're tricky, you know, they're unstable memory artifacts. But that's the reason why I like that. I think he's really kind of interdicting that power differential, you know. And I don't mean to beat Ricky up. I didn't say anything he didn't already know, and I make pictures myself, and I'm definitely aware of that power differential.
Which of the photographers took this image?
Harith. He's a really interesting guy too, you know. He kind of stumbled into photography late. He had a lot of friends that had died in Fallujah, especially during the ISIS battle, and he was actually making pictures and then drawing, inking the faces of the friends that he lost on top of the images. Whenever he would find like a shape inside the image itself that he made that lent itself to drawing, he would draw on it. I found it fascinating. But he didn't submit any of those for the show, so I didn't, you know, ask. I felt maybe perhaps it's a bit too personal.
It's hard to let go of it again.
What's that?
Hard to let go of it again.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you know, that's exactly right. Exactly right. Beautiful. It's hard to let go of them again.
Is photography a respected art form in Iraq? Do lots of people consider that it's a worthy or worthwhile hobby or profession?
Well, you know, I don't know. I know that, well, you know, they're getting the equipment that they need to make professional pictures. So, I mean, I don't know. I do know that the University of Mosul has a photography program. It's more of a kind of audio-visual program, kind of geared towards documentary storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that. When I was there, I wasn't thinking of making pictures. But when I was in Beirut, in the Middle East recently, and I did make pictures there, and I had quite a few people stop me and say, "Hey, you can't make a picture of that. That's the police station." You know, there's this lovely yellow wall with this purple trim, and I just wanted to make a picture, and I didn't want to like look up at it. So I climbed onto this generator that was next to a police station. I was standing up there trying to make this picture, and they pulled me down and said, "Dude, can't do that." So, and I say that because, you know, there's this wariness. You know, because there's this idea that an image is telling us something, it's recording something that we can think of, something that might be truthful. You know, I think that's a fallacy, personally. But.
you worked with Nora on this, and she gave a talk that I wasn't able to attend a while back. What was her role in this, and is there anything that she shared when she talked that you could relate to us?
Well, most of the stories I know about this photographers are from Nora. And so we're talking about the old Iron Bridge. You know, and the bridge is something that connects. It's almost an irresistible metaphor for anybody who's interested in writing or thinking about it, right? And I think Nora is that bridge. Nora brought the work. She's the project consultant. You know, and she's from Iraq. She immigrated to the United States with her family in 2008 through Syria. Actually left Iraq, Baghdad, through Fallujah. And so her memories of Fallujah aren't pleasant memories. But yeah, so Nora helped me, helped bring this work here. She was definitely the project consultant. She was the bridge. And Nur in Arabic means light. And that's a wonderful kind of, that special beauty to you know, what she did. Yeah, so dynamic lady. Who's also a scholar and teaches Arabic at Durham Tech. She's a visiting scholar at the University of Mosul, and she also teaches, of course, at UNC for peace development.
Did these images reshape your own memories of Fallujah?
That's a good question. Because, you know, for instance, these images here wouldn't matter to anybody, right? It's a picture of the street at night, right? But to me it matters. So this is like a mall on Highway 10, which is the main thoroughfare from the city. And before the military attacked Fallujah, assaulted in Fallujah the second time, they shut off all the power to the city. So they occupied the power. They did this by occupying the power station, seizing the power station, and they shut off power to the city. So there's no electricity. And so I find seeing the light, and the photographers were drawn to these scenes to picture this light to be compelling. You know, but again, that's compelling to me. And, you know, I don't, sometimes I worry about, and that's another reason for the vernacular mode, Tim, that you asked about earlier, because I think if anything in that mode over there, I remove myself from this. When I put this up here on the wall and tell you that why it's there, then I'm mediating this. So I'm introducing an American sensibility to these photographs, and I don't want to do that always, you know. And so another reason for the vernacular mode is to pull away from that, further away from an American sensibility.
One thing that I thought was interesting was this picture over here where you got the traffic directors. So when I talked to Nora, I asked her, I was like, do they have traffic lights in Fallujah? And she said no, that that's how they do it. And I wondered how that worked. And I often drive, anybody who lives in Durham knows if you drive east-west across Durham, you're constantly sitting at a red light waiting for it to turn green while there's hardly ever any traffic going north-south. And I was like, well, maybe that simpler way would be more efficient.
And are those the same guys that are in that photograph? There's
The same what?
there's similar two guys in the middle of the intersection.
No, I doubt it.
Because you got this post for them, and then
You know what? I didn't see that, Hillary. You might be right.
it's just interesting that
That may be the same location.
in the middle of the
It
street.
may be. I'd have to look closer, but I do. Well, first of all, you're not supposed to ask questions. And so this really brings up a good point that we've already talked about in different contexts. One of the only reasons why I chose this image here and to address it, yes, it is a traffic officer, and this person is part of that kind of the police, not necessarily the army. But the only reason why, one of the reasons I think aesthetically it works, right? I have a person here, I have a person here, and I have his hands kind of in this arrangement. And then here we are with the geese and the gulls that are flying, and it kind of aesthetically, in my mind, I was thinking about the gesture of his hands and the flight of the geese, and that's all there is to it. You know, so again, that's a visual association, not necessarily a thematic association.
It kind of continues with our boater, and then even
Continues with the boat,
and the light
absolutely.
of
Yeah, and I wanted to get this image here. It's probably my favorite, actually. You know, I just love the idea of, you know, looking out at the cityscape, you know, looking west across an area to address another question about, you know, what these images mean to me. This, like the soldiers, the Marines call this the pizza slice, for instance. This is the Jolan district. If you're reading about a military history about Fallujah, you will hear Highway 10 and Jolan district and Pizza Slice and Brooklyn Bridge, and Queen actually called this neighborhood over here Queens in almost every document. And so I find it interesting to actually see something that's not constructed, you know, in a text. And then the gulls. And there's a writer who I criticize in some of my work. And he writes about gulls metaphorically in a way that I think is problematic. So, but again, that's, you know, it's me. You know, it's me. And then that lovely, you know, carriage, I find this so intriguing, you know. I mean, everybody knows what that carriage is, right? What's that carriage? What comes to mind? Cinderella. Absolutely. An American, a story that has been Americanized by Disney. And here it is, you know, configured here. I find it interesting.
I have a question about from this image here, the black and white, and the streetscape, and looking at the power lines and whatnot. And then you see the more modernized version here of the power and the lighting. I realize there's years in between, but I'm just wondering, was this design Iraqi, or was this something that we tried to build back?
No, this is all the Iraqi, you know, for instance, I know that the old iron bridge, this bridge right here, was rebuilt and kind of refabricated and repaired really by the Dutch government. And they actually had to, you know, honestly, they actually had to hire underwater demolition experts to kind of remove demolitions from the bridge, underneath the bridge, from the many times that people have attempted to blow it up. So in that instance, yes, I don't know how much the United States has invested in restructuring or reconstruction. But I'll tell you that this road is all the same road. It's all Highway 10 right here. All Highway 10. It runs right through the center of Fallujah.
Does it really have no lanes? Looks terrifying. Drive on a multi-lane highway with no lanes.
I guess so, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think in a tendency, if you go into a museal space, you see the images kind of 55 to 60 inches off the ground, left to right. And I'm trying to kind of use the space in different directions to kind of break that linear way of entering into a story. I think it's always more expansive than that. And that's why I kind of do the clustering here and at the very end as well. Yeah.
Are these three markets?
What's that?
Are these three images of markets or malls or like?
This is the market. Yeah. This is not. This is actually in the market and over up front. And so Sura made a picture of the entry to the market, and it's up there. It has a distinctive arch. There's a red wagon. It's right below the teapot. Okay. So that's the entry to the market. And also I was looking at those images too, and they're, images of the sheep grazing and the farm field and the boy kind of riding his bike on the road kind of evoked this kind of pastoral scene for me. And that's another kind of reason for the domestic kind of vernacular mode. So, yeah, I thank you for your time. If anybody has any other questions, I'd be happy to chat with you briefly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Please make up